Welcome to the Journos on PLZ Soccer's YouTube channel. I'm Peter Martin. Hugh, McDonald and Gordon Parks are here with me. Thank you very much for your support over the course of the season. There's lots more programming on the way. We're sponsored by Cameron Commercial Vehicles. If you need a quality new or used van, then Sean's your man. Go on to CameronCommercials.com and he'll help get you the van you need for your business. So much to pack into the Journos today, but I want to say thanks to so many of you for downloading the podcast as well. We are very high up in the rankings of podcasts right across the UK and further afield as well. So I want to thank you for your support, listening to the programme, but certainly watching it, where we're smashing all sorts of records with lots of great content. Thank you to one and all. So much to talk about. Steve Clarke will occupy our thoughts. The fallout from Celtic winning the title. Small matter of the Scottish Cup final. There's managers who are saying farewell. There's Arsenal winning the league. There's the small matter of the Europa League final. We've got the playoffs as well. Can I pack it all in? I certainly hope so. Hugh is very patriotic as we get ready for a World Cup. And again, this time around, Steve Clarke has announced his 26-man squad. He's finally delivered two faces that probably pushed right at the death for it. Finlay Curtis and Ross Stewart in there. Hugh, what do you make of his squad?
It's a very Steve Clarke squad, isn't it? I mean, you weren't expecting any seismic changes. One of his strengths is his great loyalty players. Sometimes people think it can be a weakness. But no, I mean, I haven't got any strong complaints about, anybody's left out. Bowie, Hellas Verona might have been in with shit. He's scoring goals in in Serie A.
Does Ollie McBurney have a case?
Yeah, but I think Clarke kind of addressed it, in that perhaps that Ollie wasn't the best squad member. I think that I think Clarke made a great point when he was talking about Stewart, about how good he was in the squad. That always suggests to me that people that might have been on the edges might not have been as good as the squad. That's just my interpretation.
He was also very nippy when he stated that he didn't like the fact that his private conversation with Ollie McBurney became public. It told its own story.
Yeah, I mean, that's the key to it all. Gordon Strachan, when he was manager, looked for loyalty. Mm-hmm. He looked for that ability to mix with fellow members of your squad. And you need that camaraderie. You almost need that club feel about it, Gordon, so that there isn't any kind of rift. I was looking back at some of the documentaries, for example, on the England side. Yeah. And, when that golden generation, as they were dubbed by the English press, suddenly got to a major tournament, you had the Chelsea group, the Liverpool group and the Man United group who, clearly weren't able to mix with each other in a way that suggested that all the team were together. It's
a huge thing. The energy that you can generate within a squad group can work in both ways. And there are great examples of the Dutch squad that goes away ultimately always ends up in some kind of spiteful kind of exit because of politics within the team. It's critical now that you have that kind of... See, when you're talent depleted, the quality levels just aren't what other nations are. You've got to make up the small gains. And small gains, Steve Clarke's shown time and again that if you can cultivate that kind of positivity within a group... I remember being a kid, Inverclyde, the Scotland under-16 team that got to World Cup finals. That was weeks away, staying in Spain at Inverclyde. And to a man, the absolute spirit within that, the one for all, was enormous in getting Scotland to the level that they got to the final. Spirit, like Craig Brown, worked hard to engender, was part of the reason that Scotland got to that World Cup final. And it works across the board at every level. If you can get that feel-good factor, people mixing together, it can be very stressful. It can be lonely. You're away from your family. It can be all-consuming. It can be intense. You need ways to alleviate that kind of problem. And Steve Clarke's definitely down to a T, which is borne out by the fact that we're there again.
Yeah, one real worrying aspect has to be the goalkeepers. There's a 43-year-old goalkeeper in there.
Yep, and the three goalkeepers have played 3 5-a-sides matches and a kicky back at the bottom of the park. So yeah, there's that. I mean, and there's no great problems facing us. Apart from the goalkeeper, we're usually pretty solid with goalkeepers. Yes, goalkeeper game time, but hopefully by the time that comes around, they'll have played some matches together.
What if I told you a year ago that Steve Clarke would assemble a squad with 3 goalkeepers that had 7 appearances all season between them? It sounds ridiculous.
But it's a ridiculous it's been a ridiculous situation. You mean,
That's all we've got.
So we've come from an era where, almost, untrammeled, that there's been really good goalkeepers, from stretching back to your Gorhams, Leightons, even back to your Ruffies, and then right through McGregor's. I mean, there's been top goalkeepers. I think I'm not too bothered about that, actually. I think, they'll settle down. They're all good trainers. The real problems are the problems we've always had, in central defence and in striking force.
Can I just go back, insight into the reason why Liam Kelly's in the squad and Scott Bain isn't, and it's not in any way diminished Scott Bain at all, who's been a consistent performer, had a great season. It's back to the camaraderie. Liam Kelly's regard within the Rangers dressing room is enormous. His regard within the Scotland setup, enormous. Hugely popular, Kenny McLean-esque, galvanises people around him. The heart and soul of certain things. Liam Kelly's personality's got him there. And that speaks to Steve Clarke, again, the chemistry.
Well, the other thing which Hugh, you and I will be looking at very closely is Steve Clarke hinting, may I add, that he may look to a 4-4-2 formation. Now, 2 strikers, my God, that's a bit groundbreaking.
It would be. I think, I mean, one thing about Clarke is that he's got us to finals, and that's been terrific. But have we put in a performance in the finals, the recent finals? You could say Switzerland was decent, but that over the piece. That's about it. He knows now that the most important. Every manager tells you the most important game's the next one. Of course it is, but the game's high. That's a game. That's a game. I mean, if you win that, you are in pole position to progress. That is how vital this game is, because I don't think they'll beat Morocco. I think Morocco will beat us, because I think Morocco have been going under the radar. For Morocco's AFCON champions, we know there's controversy about the way they got it, but they are, and Brazil's Brazil. So I think, and he might have to be a bit more adventurous than he usually is. 4-4-2, probably be a 4-1-4-1. I would have thought, but anyway.
New contract?
Well, I'm not on board on this at all. I think it should be. Results based. I mean, people say yes, he's got a terrific record of qualifying, but without in the last qualifying campaign was astonishing. Finishing top of that group is clearing any expectations that we might add.
Is that worthy of?
I don't know. I really don't know. I'm still unconvinced.
Yeah. Let's go and have some shots on target first of all, right, before we talk about a new contract.
Well, with all due respect, though, who else is there that you say, well, there's somebody definitely waiting in the wings that could do a better job?
Derek McInnes, all day long for me.
He's still got things he wants to do domestically.
Listen, the pin, that deflation that he suffered at the weekend, he'll be reassessing his options, I think.
Actually, you do
Scotland job the Scotland job is Derek McInnes, identical, 100%.
10 years. 10 years. I mean, honestly, Derek McInnes is not ready for the Scotland job. Sometimes I think nowadays, especially international management, is all about that point where you feel as if, not so much that you've exhausted your club career, but you've got enough experience and you say to yourself, well, I've had a track record elsewhere, now's the time for me to try and not so much ease up, but use all that and try and get an international collection of players. Derek McInnes has got my God, if he's not excited by next season at Hearts, I don't know what gets you excited.
I don't agree at all. Couldn't disagree more. Can I just say that Derek McInnes craves elite, working at the top end. Derek McInnes suffered a massive body blow. Derek McInnes knows his opportunities to go and manage with elite players in an environment which is big time.
Well, Hugh, are you buying into that?
I think it's interesting, and I think it's interesting because we're taking it from a Derek McInnes point of view. What would he want to do? I think the turbulence, I think there'll be a great thought going in at Hearts at the moment, amongst the major thinkers at Hearts, of which I would say was Tony Bloom and James Anderson, about what precisely went wrong. And they won't be talking about Sam Nicholson handballs or invasions of the pitch. They would say, how did we come up short? And I'd like to see where that fallout leads.
Hugh, I understand where you're coming from. Let me try and pick you up, and I hope I'm not picking you up wrong here. You look at a club that's, I mean, what is it, 80 points they managed? I mean, you know, we're talking margins here well ahead of time. We're talking about it.
Not to Tony Bloom, it's not ahead of the time. He said, I expect to finish second this year.
Oh, he's finished second.
That's what I'm saying, so it's not well ahead of time.
No, but it's well ahead of time to say in the next 10 years we'll be splitting the Old Firm.
No, next 10 years he said he win a league.
Well, are they not ahead of time? I mean, are we looking?
They would be.
Are we looking forensically and saying Derek McInnes failed miserably? I think he
the context of this season is, and whether they like it or not, and Hugh's right, brutally, when you analyse things, as these people do, they will realise that this has been the stink bomb season, right, where the opportunity knocked, and it failed. They failed. The winners and losers. Bloom's a winner. He will be analysing that critically, and MD to think that that's not the case is deluding himself. I think the Hearts' failure will be an impact, and there will be reassessing things. They failed.
You say they failed.
Yeah, they failed.
I say they came close, and I say in the strategy, I think people, especially the way he operates as far as strategy, signing players, where they want to get to, they live and die by their data, their graphs. I think they're looking and saying, wait a minute, this guy's got us ahead of the line here. Now how do we try and run it close again? How do we take it to the next level? If I am, unless we are being incredibly cynical, I think Tony Bloom sits down with Derek and goes, Derek, okay, let's analyse the failures. Let's analyse where we got it wrong. But this is how you're ahead of the curve. This is how we take it to the next level again. There's already talk about, you know, maybe looking at a Calvin Miller as signing, but we're looking at people with good stats and saying, right, this is the budget, and here are some of the players we think that you could now really embrace, because I think the general consensus is that Derek McInnes hasn't fully embraced Jamestown analytics yet. It was at the start of the season where he said, yeah, I'm more than happy to embrace anything that helps me get to where we want to be. But he's going to find the second season is where it's all in. Tony Bloom says, okay, here's where we delivered the players before. This is how we take it on again. Can you get us another step in this curve? Because you're not for a minute suggesting to me, I accept they failed, but not for a minute accepting that Tony Bloom's going to go, this was a failure this season, surely.
I don't think failures are very emotive word. I think Tony Bloom will look at this and say our objective and position was realised. He said at the beginning of the season, you know, we're looking to finish second. So but I think you'll be looking at it as the way the season panned out, saying this was a complete and utter missed opportunity. And how was this opportunity missed? Yeah. Let's have a look at how this opportunity was missed. We're talking about, when you're talking about analytics, these guys are talking about percentage points and things like that. You're talking about 1 point here. 1 point over a season.
Let's not get caught up in the mystical adventure that Hearts have been on this season, because the building blocks were players that have already been here before. Missing Craig Halkett for the game at Celtic Park was enormous. The guys that have delivered, the guys that have been steadfast for Hearts for a while, and they came to the fore.
Does the manager get any credit for a team that was
brilliant.
In the bottom six and he came in?
Absolutely brilliant. And see the word failed. Football, whether people like it or not, they love a romance and a fairy tale and just nearly men, and also they went to Celtic Park and failed. That's just a fact. It's not a criticism. It's just a blunt fact, right? Football, you can dress it up all you want, and the Hearts story has been stunning, really colourful, really great. But at the end of the day, so getting second place was the objective, so they banked that. But when it really came to it, an opportunity knocked, they couldn't walk through the door. And Derek McInnes knows that, because he knows the real brutality of football when it comes to winning and losing.
Where did they get it wrong?
I think that they fell short because they weren't good enough against a Celtic team that know how to, and I've said it for months, the consistency they showed, they managed to go and deliver and get the job done. And winners get the job done because they know how to do it. And there was a lot of, they also need a bit of luck, but Celtic winners carry luck. And that's the difference. Hearts could not, 4 minutes, agonising, just adds to the whole mystique of it. But don't think that this was a Jamestown project that was a success. A lot of signings didn't actually hit the mark. I can think of 2 that stepped forward and did, right? Mm-hmm. That's it. It was the tried and tested that took Hearts to where they got to, with a manager that knows the scene, and it was the fermenting of a perfect kind of scenario where players actually came to the fore. Mm. But there were guys that were there before.
Parsley did mention to me, and I think we've got to stick with this, Hugh, on it, because he said, you know, I had a look at Parsley's contract, and it said, I must be given, you know, full appreciation of me sticking with Celtic for the entire 2026. So we've got to bow to him for his resolute.
You woke up. You know, that was your first thought this morning when you woke up.
I said, listen. I mean, as I said, I picked everybody bar Livingston. I might actually have picked Livingston at one point as well. The Hearts thing is the really interesting about Hearts thing is everybody's talking about Jamestown this season. Bart's is right that the Jamestown real strong influence has still to come in. It really has. I mean, there's been little flickers. I mean, Braga, well, a little fire. Braga has been, you know, has been a sign of it. But yes, I mean, if you talked about the real star performers for this season, there would be guys like Shankland, you know, despite his injury, came on well. Milan, great. Finlay, Halkett, Devlin, who weren't Jamestown signings at Jamestown. So it's very early in its process. But they will be looking at things and they will be saying to themselves, well, why was our away record so poor? I think it was interesting as well is that when the season went on, and I'll be looking at this closely, on Saturday, I watched the game not as live, I watched it later, and there's an element of Hearts looking really tired and leggy, and they were looking at that because where Hearts made great inroads in the season was where, you know, for example, Celtic were playing 3 games a week. Hearts had no real cup run in either competition.
Yep.
Had
no Europe, so the league was their focus, and they were playing generally Saturday.
Yeah.
Once it came into Saturday, Saturday, it wasn't. So they were looking at that recovery, sports science, etc. And the other thing they'll be looking at is building a squad, because next year they want to make a tilt at everything. So they're going to need, in just sheer numbers, they're going to need a bigger squad, and to do that, they'll have to get a lot of the numbers out and bring a lot of Jamestown in. So I think Jamestown really will start this summer.
When I was at Motherwell, I think it was with you, and I saw Halkett go down, and I saw Mark Leonard, who was running the game for him. He's range of passing, he's been a great addition. Again, not a Jamestown addition. It's that bit of luck that you don't carry that really cost them. But again, if you kind of go to Livingston and win, St Mirren and win, Rugby Park and win, it's like the horse race. How many guys have cheering their horse on that 15 to 1? You see the pedigree horse coming, you see it behind it. I saw it a long time coming. Celtic won 8 games in the bounce. That's what teams that win do.
Yeah, I did actually, and funny you mentioned, it's funny you mentioning the word luck. I did actually mention it to him at one point. I thought you were lucky against Motherwell and nearly bit my head off. But they ran out of luck.
I mean, the thing about it, I mean, all teams this season can look at luck and injuries. We'll look at the top 3. They all suffered injuries. Celtic had chronic injuries at the beginning of the season. Of course, they've got the capacity to bring in players. But I think any dealings I've had with these people in analytics, they put down, luck as random things, but they're looking for underlying trends. What can we identify statistically and put in our arithmetic? What can we actually measure here? And I would love to be with the Jamestown guys measuring this season, because they'll come up with stuff like away from home we just didn't create enough chances, or away from home we're too. They'll come up with stuff, you know.
Before we talk about the other side of it, which is the positive side of Martin O'Neill, which I think, and then obviously we'll look at the unsavoury side, and there's so much more I'd like to cram into the show. I look back on it, and this is where sides who are going to embrace, whether it's Jamestown Analytics or some kind of recruitment programme that other teams are using, I look back at one of the best documentaries I've ever seen in my life, which is The Last Dance, and how they embraced the coaching of two, and I can't remember his name, but they had two coaches specifically who said, you know, after you win your first title, we want to get this guy in because his analytics on playing with triangles and not making Michael Jordan the absolute epicenter of everything. It was about a team game, and it was about how they're going to play in that team game, you know, in that triangle of, you know, move the ball quickly and then, you know, take your shots when you get to these areas. I found the whole thing absolutely intriguing. And again, that part of it is where I think a lot of the analytics for Hearts and others will be used. You know, but there's no getting away from the fact, no matter how you want to play your strategy, it's all down to players. It's getting the right players, Steve Clarke, the right attitude, that never say die, that ability to merge with each other and be, you know, part of a family, and you want to live and die with each other. It goes back to Stephen Robinson, who goes up to Aberdeen and says, wait a minute, there's 3 or 4 of the foreigners are actually sitting having their meal here, 5 Scots over there, 2 other foreigners here. What you all doing? Get in and meet together and let's chat. Let's actually get to know each other and then think, I'm going to die for that person. Do you know what I mean? So there's all of that together. But the one thing that I did mention, and Hugh and I did skirt between Hearts and Celtic and Hearts and Celtic at one moment, Rangers as well, is Martin O'Neill still embraced, as he was mentioning the qualities of Mark Fotheringham and Sean Maloney tactically, he still embraced the ability for a man manager, for somebody who can go in and make people feel at ease, inject humour, inject one-to-one management skills where they felt as if they were top of the world, being noticed, being cared for, the attention to Callum Osman when he's injured. All of these things have come out, that there's still a place for someone who understands what it's like to add the personal touch, and that's where I think Martin O'Neill was at his absolute best.
Absolutely. I mean, the great. You're getting clips from inside the Celtic dressing room now. They're victorious and that. But there was one that's doing the rounds where at the end of the game against Kilmarnock, Callum McGregor's going daft in front of the fans. You know, we're not going anywhere. You know, and you're saying, so this is a team that's this whole body language, this whole thing is we're in this to win this. They're not. Everyone else is complete and utter failure. Martin, as we both know from, well, all 3 of us know from times past, can say an awful lot without saying too much. You know, that's one of his great traits. So I tend to pore over his press conferences to see if there's a wee nugget that he gives in. And I thought one of the interesting wee nuggets was where he talks about the backroom staff, which will be Maloney, McInnes and Fotheringham, having really to be very aggressive with them. No, this is the way we were playing, you know. And he says, and sometimes I was bound down to that, but I wasn't really too happy about it, but I would. So what he was bringing is this ability to be humble and take that on, but also his ability to just galvanise a whole dressing room and galvanise it through. We talk about analytics, and by the way, Celtic will be doing analytics as well. But one thing about management is the intangible. It's intangible. I always look at it as, if you could sum it up, it's having the ability to make people want to play for you. Right? I want to play for you. And there's nothing more like that than Alec Ferguson. Nothing more like that than Steen. And players in Ferguson and Steen's dressing room, some would hate him, some wouldn't like him, but they wanted to impress him. They wanted to impress him. Neil's softer that way, but let's not think that Neil is not brutal in a dressing room as well. He's made decisions in that dressing room where guys are out with the washing.
Yeah, there's two things I would say. Like, I was with somebody on Monday who was talking about a team he played with, and he was a talented player. If MD was having a go at him or trying to get him, he'd an enforcer. People around him that would go and sort other people out. That's what you're talking about, galvanising, not just the manager, but within a team. I think Jamestown will be looking at the Oriam and the problems that the Oriam... It's a title race becomes claustrophobic. And MD has been to the Oriam. It's a very kind of open to the public kind of place where they shuttle players and wee packs and ones and twos and go for their lunch up in the canteen. It's detached away from the dressing room area. I think that's a problem if you're trying to engender that kind of environment that we're talking about. Whereas Celtic have got Lennoxtown, they all go and have lunch together. All these wee small things matter if you're Jamestown and you're looking for a kind of small gain.
The other thing which I thought was the most telling of all the videos of the quality of Martin and Neil, for me, it wasn't a word spoken. It was a gesture, and it was when they were all in the dressing room after winning the title, and he turns round to Saracchi and says, "Come over," and Saracchi's looking at him, and he just gave him a cuddle. And I thought to myself, you know, in just one moment, he has literally signified to everybody, I'm not forgetting anybody, the contribution.
But Saracchi's contribution was vital because he came on and he had a pair of cojones that see when he came on, he said, I'm going to do something here.
Yeah.
Because he leads to the second goal. And at least the second goal by taking an enormous chance in his own half. And continuing, every decision he's making is positive. He's not checking out and playing the ball back. And now Neil, by the way, who knows football inside out, will have immediately looked at that and said, that's the guy that's done it for us. That's the guy that broke the deadlock. Okay, Osmond makes a great run. Maeda finishes. But he'd have said, he's the guy that had the spark. He's the guy that had the gumption to go and try and do something. I mean, I think one of the things that Celtic should be looking at immediately, and I know they are looking at it, but should get it over the line, is Saracchi to sign. My son reminds me that we saw Saracchi a couple of years ago. Where do you think we saw him, Peter? Where do you think me and Ali saw Saracchi a couple of years ago?
The River Plate Boca Juniors.
Wow.
Bombonera. The Bombonera, that's where we saw him.
Yeah.
So,
the other thing
come a long way.
He has indeed. The other thing I was going to say to you then is, okay, they're now fast approaching the possibility of a double, taking on Dunfermline in the Scottish Cup. Do you offer Martin and Neil the job for 1 or 2 years, or do you go for someone else?
No, there's a complete reboot. This is a guy who, I'm delighted the fact that he hasn't tainted. I know he spoke about his legacy. It doesn't matter, of course it does. What a shine and polish he's put on it. There's your remarkable story as well. There's your romantic story if you want it. Martin O'Neill's too old. Martin O'Neill's ran his race. He's delivered beyond the expectations that only Martin O'Neill could. But Celtic's problems are far greater than that. The whole structure of the club has to be looked at. Like I said, of course you need a manager that's got charisma and is going to go and make that kind of welcoming atmosphere for everybody. And Martin O'Neill's better than that than anybody. But his time's been. His club needs a manager who's going to be able to recruit with a contact base that's able to lift the level. Because the problem with Celtic has been recruitment. And there's so many structural issues, staffing problems. Certainty at the club needs to be confirmed in a proper way. And that's not just in the managerial staffing, it's also in the boardroom.
I couldn't have summed it up better myself, Patsy. I think you've absolutely nailed it. I've gone on record as saying if they want to be a forward-thinking club who embraces sometimes when they sign a player, and that happens when they sign a player, and then say, you're the coach, you coach them, I still would put my hat on Jens Berthel Askou because of the way they played football this season. They may well come out of left field with someone else, but if you're talking about someone who could hit the ground running, who understands the game after a brilliant season, he would be my choice. But I think you're absolutely right, Patsy, in what you say, because I think the structure, I think the way they go about their business, I think their whole PR needs a complete overhaul to try and get a greater connection and communication with the fans and a change of attitude within that board. You know, there's all right having a siege mentality, but theirs has been run like a brutal, almost Trump administration at times. And I don't think it's Celtic Football Club. I think they need to change their attitude, Hugh.
They've got to change everything, Peter. Because people, we're quite rightly, because we're a football programme, we're rightly talking about who's going to be the next manager of Celtic, who's going to be the next chairman, who's going to be the director of football. What strategy are they going to? What strategy are they looking for under the director of football? They're looking for a strategy where, in previous years, where what they've done is every team plays the same from under sixes upwards. That there's a strategy for recruitment. This is the kind of players we're looking for, and blah, 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 and this is the kind of wage structure and all that.
Do they look at the academy, Hugh, and think, why are we doing this?
I think everybody in Scotland, this is a sort of wide-ranging problem in Scotland, because the whole academy thing is now everybody's scratching their chins and going, well, what we got this for? Because people say, oh, but Scottish clubs don't unearth players. Scottish clubs are unearthing players. They're just not retaining them. I mean, Ben Gannon Dolt, he's the obvious one. But I think Finlay Curtis, for example, is a great example of the problems with Celtic and Rangers, in particular Ray academies, where you've got a player coming through who gets a few games in the first team, looks as if he's got some, but is dropped because he's not reliable, goes to another club and gets a lot of games and now and rightly in the Scotland squad. So there's so many little pitfalls to get. And what Celtic have got to do is they have to have a plan in place. And if the plan in place, which the message was at one time, director of football being in charge of all operations, blah, blah, blah. Martin, even if Martin was 47 instead of 74, he wouldn't work comfortably in that. Martin would be, it's my job, it's on, like, I'm picking the players, etc., etc. That wouldn't be an easy fit for him. I think the Martin and Neil thing is not a problem for Celtic. It's a wee challenge for them, isn't it? What do they do with him? Because I think it's obvious he's quite keen to stay on. He's an easy appointment. You can just imagine them just saying, oh, well, we've got enough trouble. I don't think he would be right appointment, I agree with you. But what do they do with him? And so, there'll be do you make him club ambassador? Do you put him even on the board?
I'll tell you another thing, Hugh, which is a bigger problem for them, which I know it sounds preposterous to suggest it, but for Celtic, their biggest problem is that they have to convince the supporter base, as well as the changes that we think should happen, they've also got to convince the supporter base that this season, by the appointment of the manager and by some modicum of, humility that creeps into that group, which I think would be hard to find, they have to convince people that they are going to buy players that can give them some kind of half-decent credibility in Europe again. They've had no ambition in Europe, none whatsoever. They've made a complete pig's ear of it, and that's what a lot of Celtic fans are looking at.
Credibility is the biggest word here, and you're right. I don't look back in my mind's eye at Peter Lawwell 6 months ago, sitting in the stand, looking haunted, ghost-like. Knew the problems were piling up. They could win a double. It depends on their attitude. Is that double a kind of, thank God for that? That alleviates a lot of the problems here. It wasn't as bad as it was. Look, all that hysteria, all that kind of mid-season crisis point. Again, we win. Again, we take over Glasgow and party. If they do that with the complacency, then the problems will be astronomical, and the fans are not daft because they've had enough. They're not going to be appeased by doubles. Martin O'Neill's story is great. It's got them out of jail, but they've got themselves out of jail through a manager that's come and pulled the whole thing together.
See, when he was on the park, Parsley,
Yeah.
he made the speech to the fans.
Yeah.
He talked about this club is better when there's unison.
Yeah.
And it was a bit of propaganda. It would have got a year ago, Hugh, maybe 2 years ago, you say that line, you'd have got a standing ovation.
Yeah.
The crowd just looked at him as if to say, well, yeah, we know what you're trying to, put across here, but we're not buying it.
No. There's two things at the end of the season that said. One thing is that Celtic have trolled Scottish football this season, trolled it. They've had 4 managerial tenures. many games did they lose in the league? 7 or 8 games in the league. They brought in 2 transfer windows where they was well bringing in me and 3 of my mates, right? I mean, there's players that we brought in that transfer window. I know there was a lot of loans, but players were brought in for transfer, big fees. You know,
Never contributed.
nothing.
No.
None. A series of just calamities. And they're odds on to win a double.
Yeah.
And by the way, they just lost a treble, probably because they changed manager too quickly. If they just said, you know, wait a week, I think they'd probably have been some. But the way I'm saying is, could you imagine a worse season for Celtic if you were giving out the news lines and then suddenly say, aye, but they won the league and they won the cup? So it shows you that there's something in there.
Do you think they'll show the humility for change, Hugh? Or do you think they'll do what Gordon's suggesting, which is, oh no, listen, he papered over the cracks. We'll be able to ride this storm out. We'll just let them go over the summer and let say nothing because they have been great at saying nothing.
I don't know. I know what they really should do, but I don't know what they will do. I think the success of Neil, which is terrific, has given them the slightest problem because if it had ended in tears, they would have been forced to say, rip it up and we'll have to do something. This gives a bit. I mean, to sum up my attitude to the whole thing, if you'd have said to me 7 games ago, is Neil going to be next Celtic? I just no, there's no chance of that. Now I'm thinking from their point of view.
But what's the mood music around support?
No, but I just think all depends about people. And see what I've found in life is people like making easy decisions.
Yeah, no, hang on.
People like making decisions that can cut the flack away from them.
It's
That's
like
what Martin and Neil can do.
it's
for
like
them.
old New Yorker. You know, there's 2 queues, right? And there's a queue that winds round the box, and it's called delusion, you know. And then there's just one guy standing at the box that says uncomfortable truths. Nobody wants to face uncomfortable truths.
No, you're
Peter's
right.
point about the credibility. Credibility exists for Celtic going forward if the board understand that they need to be credible and go and get a Roberto Martinez figure in, somebody of that kind of quality and stature. And that's your starting point. Because then you automatically have a guy who's fantastic at recruiting. He knows everybody within the game. And then you've got an excitement then amongst the Celtic support. If they don't do that, again, the Celtic fans are not going to be conned into it, believing that it'll be all right on the night again as it was, because it might not be. Europe needs to be their kind of totem pole for them. It needs to be something that they can attack properly. Do it credibly, and credibility comes with bringing in somebody who stands for everything that Celtic want to do going forward with the credibility of name. The name matters.
Let's look at the unsavoury aspects of it all. Steve Clarke says the pitch invasion is a bad look for the game. I personally think, Hugh, there's been a fair amount of hysteria. There's been quite a few people who have been condemning in their opinion. The pitch invasion, it happens all over the world. What people are angry about and unhappy about is pitch invasion's one thing. The conduct of some people on that pitch, invading and intimidating, goading, and we'll only find out shortly about the attacking aspect of it. But quite simply, it was unsavoury, and that is the point that people should be focusing on. The people who were on the pitch, who didn't get off it, and who caused mayhem and threatened the Hearts players. Those people shouldn't be back in the ground.
Well, those people should, and hopefully will, be the subject of nothing to do with football. They were subject to legal proceedings.
Yeah.
I mean, this is a...
It's been quite rapid though. I mean, there's people banged up right now.
And that should be the first and only priority. Get these people, get them charged, and get them through the courts. Because I'm quite tough in invasions. I'm maybe getting older. I just say, don't go on the park, because going on the park, I see why people do exuberance, as the late Rod Petrie would say. But once if they're on the park anyway, and then they start threatening people. And they don't have
That's
to be
two
subject.
separate issues, though, Hugh.
Well,
You shouldn't be on the park. That's fine. We get that. But there is an element of, okay, it's over-exuberance. Is over-exuberance breaking the law? Do you break the law by then your actions on the park is to actually... You know, we understand they've broken the rule on going on the park.
Yeah.
If then you then go into criminal behaviour...
Oh, absolutely. Once you're into criminal behaviour, but you're only into criminal behaviour because you're going on the park. You know, you've broken that taboo, you've gone on. It's... I think... I admire the way the police are going about it forensically. They'll look at it and it'll go through the due processes. I've got a lot of time for people to say that when you're at your work, you should be safe. That's a simple line. You shouldn't go at your work, and it doesn't matter. People say, "Oh, the Hearts players did this or that." No. If you're at there, just you're in a situation which might be threatening towards you. It's seeming to be threatening towards you. That's dangerous.
Listen, it's been a joy vacuum because of VAR this season on the park. At the end of every season, the team that wins the league, their fans invade the pitch. It just seems to be a hysterical reaction, as you say to it. You can't vet supporters. You're going to get morons. A society problem. What happened on Saturday is clearly unacceptable, and the people will be taken. I mean, there's people in jail just now because of it.
There's one who actually goes on the park and shouts some sectarian nonsense at somebody. You know, I mean, that's when you cross the line. That's where there's criminality involved. I think the other thing, which is, again, the last thing you want to hear at times is politicians looking for votes on it. You know, the First Minister, John Swinney, talking about legislation, it's not manageable. It's not manageable.
No,
it's just a lot of nonsense. And then you get, and I said it last week on the show that you wait, Celtic win the league, there'll be calls for inquiries. My God, George Folks, as if you could have just laid your hat on it.
Oh, God bless George Folks. So.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, it's not manageable, Hugh.
Well, you've got a situation in the Parliament yesterday when an MSP stood up and said, you know, Celtic has to be, in other clubs as well, if there's celebrations, has to be brought to account and pay for the damage in the city centre. In the city centre, and the cabinet member stood up and said, "Oh, nothing's off the table." Not saying anything at all, but saying nothing's off the table. The whole thing's ludicrous. Ludicrous.
But you get a back.
How can you go to Celtic, a public limited company, and say, "Do you know what? See a few thousand people, some of whom might have been at your ground, but a lot of them weren't. I've just caused a lot of damage 3 miles down the road. Can you pay for it, please?"
Yeah. Well, it's like anything that happens out with a game inside the ground. They're not culpable for it. It's just, I think it's just, you know.
Madness. What are we talking about here? The same back catalogue as we spoke about 2 years ago, 3 years ago, 4 years ago. Then you have Parliament getting involved. The same old hot air gets blown. Nothing ever happens. Has anything ever happened? Because I can go back, headlines, shame games, incidents. We will sort this out. Thuggery. We'll come down hard. Direct liability for the clubs never happens. Nothing will happen. I just that is the truth. Nothing will happen.
Strict liability. I don't think the clubs. I don't think they're interested in it.
I mean, the clubs. I mean, it'd be madness for the clubs to agree to that. The only way you'll get anything like that is if you get a football regulator in who's got legislative powers. If he's a guy that you know, the government, you know, trying to do it in England, brings legislation that you have got an administrator that can make binding legal laws. That's the only way it gets in. And you're not going to get that because every step of the way that takes in Parliament, the clubs, with their money and all that, are just going to...
They're also they need to be cautious about how they're treating fans again, because there's overkill. And this incident at the weekend, you've got to be careful that you don't actually demonise supporters that are just enjoying it. I put it East End Park, Dunfermline won the league. I was in the faraway corner flag, the old stand. As soon as the full-time whistle went, I'm playing the team to get beat, clearly. All the fans pile on the pitch. It's intimidating. It's hard because you've got to then make your way through them and get out. The Dunfermline fans were brilliant that day, just enjoying themselves. Fans should be allowed to... might sound... If their team wins the league, that explosion of joy, get on the pitch and celebrate with your team. I've not got a problem with that. You've got to be careful how you dissect the morons who are in the mind. Very and the people that are just enjoying themselves. There has to be a balance there. But getting on the pitch is a tradition. People that are actually setting their hair on fire about what happened at the weekend, it happens all across the world.
There's an interesting thing about Saturday's game, though, that was because it was a winner-take-all. I mean, you're saying that every team wins the league, you know, the fans invade the park. I think that's the first time Celtic have won the league and there's been an invasion at Parkhead. Would we be right? Out of the last 14...
I would be astonished if that's true.
It's been a long time since they won it at home. You know, in a game that meant so much.
But that was the point.
Yes.
Saturday was... Normally Celtic are coming to win a game, 3 games, 4 games before the end of the season. And they win it. And even if they win it away, there's no real pitch invasion or anything. Saturday was an incredible situation. It was cranked up rightly. And then the way the game played out, it was impossibly cranked. You got a winner with, 2 minutes to go, which wasn't a winner. Suddenly. I mean, even got to that stage.
Yeah.
Hugh,
I also think one thing that I would say, Hugh, if there's going to be, you know, this forensic approach to analysing, you know, where there's been wrongdoing, I also think that the Scottish authorities, the SPFL, the SFA, and a number of people, including politicians, should be looking and saying to the courts, let's send a message out to people who think it's okay to post a referee's address.
Well, goodness.
To look back and make people's life very, very uneasy because they're at the place of work and trying to do a job to the best of their ability. I think you've got to send a message out in the courts to hammer the people who have been found guilty of pitch invasion with sectarian abuse, pitch invasion with attacking players or intimidating them or, you know, goading them at a point where it could become, you know, threatening for a player. Referees, VAR assistants who can't go about their daily life, and I'm speaking here about the Andrew Dallas and John Beatons of the world, who can't go about their daily life because they're scared of what's going to happen to their family. These people should be hammered.
Here's the problem we have. If you work in Morrison's and somebody comes and tries to steal stuff from your shop and you try to intervene, if you're a staff member, you will get somebody who will try and do that. How do you intervene? How do you tackle that person and what are the consequences of that? You're always going to get that in supermarkets. Sadly now you're always going to get that in football, within stadiums. It's just society has got knuckle draggers that are going to drag everything down, who can't behave themselves, who do things on social media, who are so pea-brained that their bigotry overwhelms it at times. The alcohol problem before games, you're going to have these problems in football. There's no magic bullet to solve that, other than deterrent, and it has to be in the court to do that. But to eradicate these things is a pipe dream. It's just not going to happen. And it's not because of football. It's not because of Morrison's. It's because of society and the absolute decline within the behaviour of certain people within that.
Scottish Cup final.
This week.
I'm going to try, and forgive me for this, by the way, I'm going to try and cram in about 10 different points, Cup final and various other things quickly. But can I just ask this, being slightly facetious about it, right? Are we guilty now of being statue-daft? I mean, there will be a time when people can't move around in the city because there's statues to everybody.
Actually, statues all over. There's plenty of room in that Celtic way, though, for a few. And it's amazing, once they started, and they're all, you know, all over Scotland now. I think it's a great thing in the hometowns. I think, you know, having your Davy Coopers and your Tommy Gemmels and that wee one of Bobby Lennox and Salcott's terrific. Jimmy Johnson, that wee one that's just off the road in View Park. I'm a statue guy. I don't think they do any harm.
No, neither do I. But I mean, Martin O'Neill's the latest statue. But I think the Lisbon lines right down that Celtic walkway should be every one of them.
Aye,
you know what I mean?
And there's plenty got the other side. I mean, you could have Willie Maley, you could have Jimmy McGrory. I mean, all these. But the great one at Ibrox is perfect for it as well. The way they're frontage with Walter Smith and John Gregg and all. I'm all for it. The thing about us in football is that slowly we get to see how important football is, not just to me and you and Partsy, but how it is to the general population. Then we see people coming over from abroad and doing all these tours of ground and that, and seeing how they
Here's a lovely story for you, right? A good friend of ours, Glasgow celebrity, Scotland celebrity, Brian Matthews. You know Brian? Brian was in Fife, and there's Jim Baxter statue in Fife, and he passed it, and it was looking tired, it wasn't getting maintained. Brian took it upon himself 2 weeks ago to raise money and get it all done up. And the Jim Baxter, where would it be in Fife?
Carton Den.
Yeah. And they've got it looking resplendent and fittingly all tarted up. So Brian, take a bow.
Yeah, absolutely. The only thing I have a problem with it, because society is forever changing and people always change their attitudes to things that, you know, the last thing I'd want to see 30 years from now when we'll no longer be here, you get a chance maybe.
No chance.
But 30 years from now, I'd hate to get to a situation where we're looking down Hugh and they've linked Jim Baxter and Bobby Lennox to the slave trade. and they want the
sugar dealers from Jamaica.
Right, I can't dwell on it. I just thought, Scottish Cup final, Celtic Dunfermline. Is there anything stopping the O'Neill juggernaut of all people? You know, the pupil against the master.
Never back against Neil Lennon. I say it all the time. Big boy, young kid, Todd, game set for him. Go and show how good a player. Love him. Love his glasses. Love his style. It's a day for a moment for somebody to do something different. If Dunfermline are going to lay a glove in Celtic, it has to be something from a maverick point of view within the collective, but somebody to go and do something special. That Celtic defence is get-atable. Are they complacent? Do they believe the double's already there? Dunfermline certainly hope so. That's their best hope. Go and do something different. Seize the day.
Are they going to win?
No.
What a brilliant delivery, and then classic Ruffy. No.
Two things for Dunfermline to be cheerful. Last year Aberdeen won the Scottish Cup without having a shot on target. So, and if they think that Dunfermline against Celtic is a mismatch, Celtic versus Barcelona was one of the greatest mismatches in recent history, and Neil Lennon was successful that day. So there are reasons to hope, but as Damon Runyon said, the race does not always go to the swift and the strong, but that's the way to bet. Okay,
Partick Thistle against St Mirren Thursday, then Monday. This is fantastic.
Oh, I was at a Partick Thistle do on Monday night. It was they've done this big documentary. American filmmakers came over.
I've heard about it. Yeah,
it's really good, and it was all about the playoffs of past and being 3-0 up in Dingwall and losing it, etc., 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 etc. I think again to be proactive about Thistle. I think they were by far the second best team in the championship. Points prove that. And St Mirren have got that merest whiff of a Hibs under Terry Butcher. Where doesn't seem to be much for a lot of them to play. I think a lot of them will be gone. I think there's an air of, I don't know, I wouldn't say complacency, but there's an air of, shall we say, not high motivation. Thistle being a different one. I think Thistle, my short answer, Thistle have got a good chance this one.
I'm with you in this. I think Thistle have got the momentum.
They do. Good manager, Alec Ray. He was run through a brick wall for Alec Ray. He gets you to feel that way. Mark, brilliant, right? Clever. Here's the problem St Mirren have. They've got a rookie manager who's at his depth, and even though he's a highly regarded guy, and it's not his fault he get placed in that position. They've got a team full of guys that are not invested in that club. They've won the League Cup. Clearly they're not invested because the performances have been ranked rotten. They'll be off-ski. If you're in that Partick Thistle dressing room, we're talking about togetherness. You're talking about guys who are having a final swan song. You're talking about young talent that can go and spread their wings. They've got a lot of guys there that are potentially able to go and play in the Premier League and move on. They've got a platform now. And I think this is St Mirren's biggest danger. The animal within Partick Thistle is hungry and determined to go and do something. Panic and Paisley, complete opposite. That energy, give me the hunger all day long, because panic just depletes you. And they're a club in depletion.
Thistle?
No, St Mirren.
You're going to go? No, but I mean, who are you going for?
Thistle.
Okay, 3 Thistles. Well, we could end up with egg in our face in next week's Journos.
I've been right all season, by the way.
All season.
Exactly. I know you've been right all season. Yeah, well
done. Talking about egg in the face, I've been an omelette all season.
Okay, quick. These next are. This is almost like a quick go through them all. Right. Arsenal, 22-year wait. Finally, they win the title, and now he's got the chance to have a 5-year deal. Mikel Arteta.
It wasn't so long ago. People were sitting on this very couch saying, "Should he go?" And I looked at you and what kind of mad world do we live in? What a mad season.
Are you just going to praise yourself the whole programme?
Well, I'm just telling you, there seems to be this kind of... People want scalps taken left, right and centre. Brilliant achievement. Love to see the Arsenal fans celebrating. Long overdue. Deserved it. Deliver the Champions League? Probably not. They're coming up against a force that are just everything that football should be.
Okay. So well done to him. I'm going to go to you for the next quick point, which is difficult because we could dedicate a whole programme to it. But Terry Christian, you remember he's a Man United fan. He used to present The Word.
I loved him.
So he came out with a brilliant thing on Twitter when they were, and he's a big red, but when they were talking about Pep Guardiola, his place in history, and there's Pep sitting around all the trophies that he's won, and they're thinking, one of the greatest managers of all time, and he said, well, he doesn't lay a glove on Fergie. He says because Pep Guardiola inherited a fantastic side at Barcelona. Over and above that, he's had millions, billions to spend on teams. He still has to put them together to make them win. Terry Christian's point was, and it's something that we all have embraced up here in Scotland, we don't need to be told about it, Fergie took an Aberdeen side and took them onto another planet.
I think the man, and Pep Guardiola is not to blame for this because he's never had to sort of take a second-rate team. Nobody talks about the Barcelona, but all due respect, he's a great coach and all that, but if you've got Xavi, Iniesta and Messi just to start with, come on. I think, and this is not Pep's fault because he's not had that opportunity, I think to be a great manager, you have to have done it against the odds with a lower team. The reason I think Mourinho is a terrific manager is not what he did at Chelsea and all that, whatever. It's what he did at Porto. And that season at Inter Milan, where he won the Champions League with Inter Milan. Fergie, I was up interviewing Neil Simpson. It brings it all back. I was reading Neil Simpson's book, and it's like, we know all this. We know it all, but reading it again in a cup run, beating Bayern Munich, beating Real Madrid in a final, going on to a top Hamburg team in the Super Cup. That's stellar stuff. That's stuff that you, I mean...
Unbelievable.
I mean, and you say to yourself, and that'll always be a wee miss, not that Pep will bother too much on Pep's CV.
There's also the barometer should be involving, Phil Foden's been a success, somebody that's come through the system. Alex Ferguson brought a whole youth team and took on Europe and won. At Aberdeen, again, there was a mixture of youth that he put people onto a different stratospheric career path, right, by his achievement and the lessons they learned under him. Pep, get the chequebook out, brilliant manager, great to watch his teams play, but there has to be a more rounded look at and Alex Ferguson took a youth team and they took on Europe and won.
Yeah, absolutely. Villa or Freiburg?
Villa.
Villa.
Yep, go Villa again. That'll be his 5th Europa League win. Unai Emery, if he pulls it off. Spurs or West Ham to get relegated?
West Ham.
West Ham to get relegated. Spurs take on Everton. Everton's manager's David Moyes.
Yeah.
Spurs beat.
I know. If it's pure likeability, it's hard to toss a coin, really, right? Likeability, it's going to cost the taxpayers money if West Ham go down. The scandal of the stadium, the people within the club, what they did to Moyes.
Who are you going for?
Spurs to go down because I watched them last night and they should go down after that performance.
Okay. Spygate. They're going to appeal it, Hugh, but Southampton. Southampton.
They're going to appeal it.
Spying on other teams. Where are we going?
Well, the thing about it is there'll be a lot of people, certainly foreigners, and I'm not trying to be xenophobic here, but looking at this and going, what the hell's going on? Because it is accepted practice abroad. Remember Bielsa got done at Leeds United and he was in a press conference. Bielsa says, it's just not lit. I mean, everybody does this in Argentina. So I see this point about there's a young member of staff that's been revealed in this through text, and I hope people lay off him because he's just been following orders and he
climbed a tree.
He's got his life to
A
live.
club with that kind of resource, go and buy a drone.
With all due respect, I mean, what are they going to find out? For God's sake, man, geez.
It's going to be Hugh's marking the front post at a corner. But the thing is, from what and I must admit this, I might be completely outside, I look as a fairly minor infraction for me. I mean, the financial implications of this.
And by the way, that's going to go. That will run through courts for years. Can I tell a quick story?
Yes, hurry up.
East Stirling manager Dennis Newell, Thursday night. Remember the old first park with the wall? And then you get the retail park behind it? We were doing set pieces and Dennis Newell had figured out this eureka, why has nobody else tried it? He get wee Joe Robertson to swing corners in. And one of the strikers, so one of the centre-halves had to put a striker on their back and wee Joe would float these 20-foot balls in. And he thought he'd worked out this magnificent strategy that would take teams by storm. And I went, there's a problem with that. Why would nobody else have tried it? So I'm in somebody's shoulders, heading the ball in, right above the bar. Why do you think that wasn't acceptable? Why do you think nobody else does it?
Go on.
It's ungentlemanly.
Ungentlemanly conduct.
Right, okay, that's for another programme. Interestingly enough, next week, guys, when we're on the programme, we will discuss, the aftermath of relegations and Scottish Cup final victories. But next week, and the week after that, we'll be getting ready for the World Cup, but we'll also be dedicating our programme to giving the definitive 50 players, the best 50 players in the Scottish Premier League in its various guises since 1975. If you go onto our website, all you have to do is select the player. It's not necessarily the best, but if you select the player that you think should be in that 50, then as soon as you register your vote, the winner, we'll take out randomly a winner who will get a commission painting of their favourite player from Gio Thompson, the sports artist. So good luck with that. That's going to be a great competition, and we'll give you our definitive 50. If you've got one of the players in it, and you're in that prize draw, you could have yourself a fantastic painting. Before we go, we've got, 3 days? 3 days for you to get on there, get into the prize draw for our Lucky Tiger competition to go to the World Cup. Yes, 2 games, 2 tickets for each of the 3 games that Scotland are playing, and I'll let Ruffy tell you what it's about.
Here's your chance to win the Scotland World Cup experience with Lucky Tiger. You and a guest could be heading to the USA to follow Scotland with tickets for all 3 group games, flights, 14 nights accommodation and £1,000 spending money included. Entries are £5. The live draw takes place on Lucky Tiger's channel on May 24th. Click the link now to enter and read the full terms and conditions. Good luck.
Enter now.
Does it get any better than that?
I'm surprised. If Ruffy goes in, he could be 4 World Cups.
Yeah, absolutely. And by the way, in the prize draw, the draw will be conducted by Lucky Tiger on the 24th of May, which is 4 days away. And over and above that, if you can't make it to the World Cup, you can take a cash alternative, which would be a humdinger of money for the summer for you. But nevertheless, the 3 games and 14 nights accommodation, does it get any better?
No, it doesn't get any better. I've been dreaming about it.
Yeah. Don't dream about it. Get involved in the prize draw. It's as simple as that.
I'm involved. I'm dreaming that I've won.
Good luck with the competition with Lucky Tiger. We've got lots more from Lucky Tiger coming up next month as well. But what a show. We've crammed everything in, Hugh. We've done well, haven't we?
Just about there, yeah. Good on you.
Absolutely. Thanks to Gordon Parks, thanks to Hugh McDonald, thanks to so many of the Journos who've come on board here. Apologies to Michael Grant, who we only invited into the studios here when Aberdeen were getting absolutely battered. He took a fair bit of a hammering, Hugh.
Yeah, I think so. When Aberdeen went battered, he was in every week. He was on the show more than me. I'll be interested to see how he sees Aberdeen going forward. Maybe one for the beginning of the season.
Yeah, absolutely. I hope you've enjoyed the Journos. There's lots more to come from the Journos over the summer, so there's lots more content for you to enjoy, and thank you for your support. Some of our record-breaking figures, and of course the people who've subscribed. Hit that subscribe button on our YouTube channel and come and join the PLZ family. From Gordon, from Hugh, from myself, Peter Martin, thank you for listening in the podcast, and thank you for watching on our YouTube channel.